the few Democrats I know who voted to exempt the gun industry from being able to be sued. Talk about a special interest. We can sue. We should be able to sue drug companies. We should be able to sue tobacco companies. We cannot sue the gun manufacturers because he voted for that years ago. He says it was a mistake now. I'm prepared to accept he says it's a mistake. Well, your question is, what do we do from this point on? And by the way, I might add, I'm the first.
Guys, Joe Biden is raping Bernie Sanders right now, like legit raping him. And he's doing it literally by merely demonstrating that he has any lingering cognitive ability that he once had. He's firing on like 35% capacity right now. And he's raping Bernie Sanders with that 35% of himself. Bro. LOL.
Person to go on national television in any administration and say I supported gay marriage. I supported gay marriage when asked. And it started a ripple effect. I'm not taking all credit for it, but I'm the first major player to say I support gay marriage on national television.
All that I'm saying here is
leadership.
We can argue, this or that bill. But what I'm suggesting is that in this time of crisis, when we're living in a really, really unsettling world, economically, from a healthcare perspective of the coronavirus, the people of America know my record, okay? For 30 years, I have stood with the working families of this country. I have taken on every special interest there is out there, and that is what I will do in the White House. That's a very different record than Joe's.
That is not a different record than mine.
That is a totally different record than yours, all right? I mean, and it's a matter of unsettling campaign when you're economically getting all this money healthcare perspective of the coronavirus.
Sanders seems to believe that he can win by being correct. This is a massive failure of understanding on the part of Sanders. Either that or he's just a coward. It's probably a mixture of both of those factors. But yeah, he's not doing well. Sanders seems to believe that he can win by.
Who will take to the White House what I've done for my whole life. Thank you, Senator Sanders. And that is take on special interest. I think I'm that candidate.
Joe Biden understands how to look better than the guy standing next to you. He's pretty good at it. Especially next to Sanders.
Let's
talk about the future Vice President Biden. If you become the Democratic presidential nominee,
Jake Pepper to the rescue.
How will you appeal to supporters of Senator Sanders when you do disagree on so many issues?
He's making it hard for me right now. I was trying to give him credit for some things. He won't even take the credit for things he wants to do. Look, I think that I want to make it clear. If Bernie's a nominee, I will not only support him, I will campaign for him. And I believe the people who support me will do the same thing. Because the existential threat to the United States of America is Donald Trump. It's critical. I would hope that Bernie would do the same thing if I'm the nominee and encourage all of his followers to, in fact, support me as well. Because it's much bigger than either of us. Character of the nation is on the ballot. It goes well beyond whether or not Senator Sanders and I both agree we need
daily reminder to vote for Trump.
Healthcare should be a right, not a privilege. We both agree we have to deal with student debt. We both agree we have to deal with education and access to education. We both agree that we have a new Green Deal to deal with the existential threat that faces humanity. We disagree on the detail of how we do it, but we don't disagree on the principle. We fundamentally disagree with this president on everything. This is a man who wants to cut Social Security, cut Medicare, not Bernie, the President of the United States. So this is much bigger than whether or not I'm the nominee or Bernie's the nominee. We must defeat Donald Trump. He is the exit. 4 more years of Donald Trump will fundamentally change the nature of who we are as a nation. We've got to restore this country's soul. That's essential. And as long as this president is there, we're not going to be able to do that.
Senator Sanders,
can I just say a word, then I'll respond to you?
Well, it's just a quick question, which is, if he is the nominee, Vice President Biden, You've already said you would support him. But will you campaign for him? Will you urge your supporters to?
On day one, when I announced my candidacy, what I said is this country cannot deal with a president who is a pathological liar, who is running a corrupt administration, who obviously doesn't know the Constitution of the United States, who believes is above the law, who is a racist and a sexist and a homophobe. He is the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. And what I said on day one, Joe, day one, that obviously I hope to win the nomination. But if I don't win the nomination, and I think every other Democratic candidate is prepared to come together to do everything humanly possible to defeat Donald Trump. But let me respond to something that Joe said. You know, we talk about the Green New Deal and all of these things in general terms, but details make a difference. What I have said throughout this campaign, and I don't think I've heard you say this yet, Joe, is that if we are going to if we're going to save this planet for our kids and future generations, we need to have the courage to take on the greed of the fossil fuel industry and make it clear to them that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. We have a very detailed proposal. Happy to get the endorsement of the Sunrise Movement, the young people.
We're going to get into the Green New Deal.
Okay.
We're going to talk about climate change. We have to squeeze in a quick break. When we come back, the CNN Univision Democratic presidential debate will return. Stay with us.
This is the Away Travel Uniform. It's a collection of suitcases and bags that work together, thoughtfully designed to make travel easier. See this bag? You can attach it to your suitcase like this. You can mix and match, and even personalize them. This is the Away Travel Uniform. And this is how you build yours. Start your 100-day trial today at awaytravel.com.
Shopping online, you're probably wasting money. That's why there's Honey, your smart shopping assistant that helps you save time and money. We all know about promo codes. With just a single click, Honey will find every working code on the internet and apply the best one to your card. Honey has already found people over $1 billion in savings. Start saving on all your favorite sites, over 20,000 of them. Download Honey for free with just 2 clicks at joinhoney.com.
Frustrated that everyday activities cause wrinkles and there's nothing you can do about it? Now there's a solution. Downy Wrinkle Guard is a fabric conditioner that helps protect you from wrinkles all day. Just pour the dye-free liquid into the rinse dispenser. After a day of wear, pants washed with Downy Wrinkle Guard and detergent are virtually wrinkle-free. It even comes unscented. If you don't love Downy Wrinkle Guard, we'll give you your money back.
Your mission. Stand up to moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis and take it on with Rinvoq. Rinvoq, a once-daily pill, can dramatically improve symptoms. Rinvoq helps tame pain, stiffness, swelling, and for some, Rinvoq can even significantly reduce RA fatigue. That's Rinvoq relief. With RA, the overactive immune system attacks your joints. Rinvoq regulates it to help stop the attack.
Rinvoq can lower your ability to fight infections, including tuberculosis. Serious infections and blood clots, sometimes fatal, have occurred, as have certain cancers, including lymphoma, and tears in the stomach or intestines, and changes in lab results. Your doctor should monitor your blood work. Tell your doctor about any infections, and if you are or may become pregnant while taking Rinvoq.
Ready to take on RA? Talk to your rheumatologist about Rinvoq relief. Rinvoq, make it your mission.
Hi, hello, how are you? Great. Now that that's out of the way, it's the Casper end of season clearance. We're making room for something new. In the meantime, save up to 20% on a Casper mattress, including the one with over 50,000 perfect 5-star reviews. Enjoy sleep and saving money? Figured. Save up to 20% and try one for 100 nights risk-free with free shipping and returns. Visit Casper.com or a store near you today.
Yes.
We made USAA insurance for veterans like Martin. When his wife retired, they buckled down.
What did you say? No, thank you.
It's all snack food. It's from my client. He went gluten-free. like a bunch of different kinds of crackers. I just thought you might want to go through it and pick anything you like.
Busy at the moment.
Okay, I'm gonna put it in here on the stand. Anything you don't want, just put it back upstairs, okay?
So while he's paying that much, even with his insurance, she's paying this much just by using GoodRx. Use GoodRx to compare prices at pharmacies in your area and stop paying too much for your prescriptions. Download the free app today and take back control.
All month long on the TBS app. Stop and watch a movie. Like a pit bull with no leash. All month long on the TBS app.
Welcome back to the CNN Univision Democratic presidential debate live from Washington, D.C. And as we noted, Arizona will vote on Tuesday. We solicited questions from undecided Democratic voters there. One is from Amy Langefeld, who is a law professor from Chandler, Arizona, with a question for Senator Sanders.
Women are the canaries in the coal mine of the conservative agenda. Our access to health care is at risk from the Federalist Society's remaking of the courts. Our lives are threatened by abusive partners' access to guns. Women are disproportionately affected by bail requirements, Social Security cuts, and cuts to public education. How will your cabinet ensure the best advice on issues that affect women's physical and financial health? Thank you.
My cabinet, my administration will look like America. Last I heard, over half of the people in America are women, and that will be the representation in my cabinet and my administration. And in terms of policies, unlike Joe, I have consistently believed, and have a 100% lifetime voting record from groups like NARAL, that it is a woman's right to control her own body, not the government. I have believed that we have got to move aggressively to deal with domestic violence in this country. I have aggressively and I think effectively made the case that we cannot have women in America earning 80 cents on the dollar compared to men, and if you're a minority woman, it's 50 or 60 cents on the dollar. We need to have universal, affordable, high-quality child care so women who are single or married can go off to work and know that their kids are going to be well taken care of. So I think if you look at my agenda, which is on Bernie Sanders.
This is really weak. This is so weak. I wish he was the nominee so we could crush him.
.com, what you will find, it is a very strong agenda in fighting for the rights of women who today are under incredible political.
Don't worry though, we're going to crush Joe anyway.
Assault by Trump and Republican governors all across this country.
Vice President,
I will respond to that.
please.
Yes, thank you. Number one, I agree with the question, the underlying premise of Amy's question. Number one, I committed that if I'm elected president, have an opportunity to appoint someone to the courts. I'll appoint the first black woman to the courts. It's required that they have representation now. It's long overdue. Secondly, if I'm elected president, my cabinet, my administration will look like the country. And I commit that I will, in fact, I'll pick a woman to be vice president. There are a number of women who are qualified to be president tomorrow. I would pick a woman to be my vice president. Number three, I'm the guy that wrote the domestic violence law, and I'm the guy that put in the prohibitions that no one who abuses someone else should be able to own a gun, period. They should not be able to own a gun. I would get the boyfriend exception amended. Now I've gotten it passed that if you get a stay away order from a court, you have a child with someone, you cannot own a gun. No one should be able to own a gun who has abused a woman, period.
Mr. Vice President, If I could just follow up. Just to be clear, you just committed here tonight that your running mate, if you get the nomination, will be a woman?
Yes.
Okay, let me.
Senator Sanders, will you?
Right now, may I just respond and
Please.
ask Joe a question? Right now, a woman's right to control her own body is under massive assault, unprecedented assault. Yes. Joe, you have in the past, on more than one occasion, voted for the Hyde Amendment, which says that a woman, low-income woman, could not use Medicaid funding for an abortion. Is that still your view, or have you modified it?
It is not my view. It's not my view. And by the way, everybody who's been in the Congress voted for the Hyde Amendment at one point or another because it was locked in other bills. The reason why I affirmatively came out opposed to the Hyde Amendment was that if we're going to have public funding for all health care along the line, there is no way you could allow for there to be a requirement that you have Hyde Amendment, a woman who doesn't have the money could not have coverage under health care.
Well, I'm glad.
Number two, and I've done that, I did that a while ago, okay? Number one. Number two, I would send immediately to the desk of the United States Congress when I'm elected president, if I'm elected president, a codification of Roe v. Wade amended by Casey. Because I think it's a woman's right to choose. I think it's a woman's opportunity to be able to make that decision.
What do you mean zero watching, Langston? You're watching. I'm commenting.
Senator Sanders, before we move on, I just
Suck
want to
it.
get you to respond.
You have a lifetime 100% voting record from NARAL?
I know my record of late from NARAL has been 100%. I don't know whether it was 25 years ago.
Well, all right. I mean, I think one of the differences, not to pick a bone here, is I have been consistent. All right. I've always believed in that, and you have not. I'm glad you have changed your views.
Senator, just to be clear, the vice president committed to picking a woman as his running mate. If you get the nomination, will you?
In all likelihood, I will. For me, it's not just nominating a woman. It is making sure that we have a progressive women, and there are progressive women out there. So my very strong tendency is to move in that direction.
Let's turn now to immigration. Vice President Biden, you recently said, for the first time, that the Obama-Biden administration made a big mistake in deporting millions of immigrants, but you didn't publicly speak out against it at the time. What commitment will you make tonight that as president, you won't deport millions again?
Number one, I said that it took too long to get it right. And the president did get it right by DACA, as well as making sure that he tried to protect parents as well. And by the way, moving on an immigration bill as well. The fact is that we already had a vote on an immigration bill, by the way, and Bernie voted against it, the immigration bill. Had he voted for it,
Joe Biden is a skilled politician in the standard mold, but he's very earnest. He has that earnest quality to him. So he's very skillful as a standard mold politician, aside from all of his giant weaknesses, which we will of course exploit to destroy him in November.
We'd already have 6 million undocumented would be citizens as I speak right now. But I will send to the desk immediately a bill that requires...
The point is, he's better than a fucking socialist.
...to access to citizenship for 11 million undocumented folks, number one. Number two, in the first 100 days of my administration, no one will be deported at all. From that point on, the only deportations that will take place are commissions of felonies in the United States of America.
So to be clear, only felons get deported and everyone else has to stay?
Yes. And the reason is it's about uniting families. It's about making sure that we can both be a nation of immigrants as well as a nation that is decent.
Let me respond. I'll answer your question. Let me respond to Joe's comments about 2007 immigration bill. That bill was opposed by LULAC, the largest Latino organization in America. The Southern Poverty Law Center called its guest worker programs akin to slavery. There wasn't really a vote on the bill. It was killed because there was a vote on the Dorgan Amendment. I think it was 49-48. You know who voted with me on that one, Joe? Barack Obama. He understood that that proposal was a bad idea. We don't need slavery in America where guest workers are forced to stay with their employers. But in terms of immigration in general, let me outline some of the things that we do. Day one, we restore the legal status of 1.8 million young people and their parents in the DACA program. Number two, immediately, we end these ICE raids, which are terrorizing communities all over this country. Three, we change the border policy under my administration. No federal agent will ever grab little babies from the arms of their mothers. And fourth, I think we can pass what the American
Mothers of babies. This is a PSA to mothers of babies. Don't put them in dangerous situations. If you live in a dangerous situation, recognize that fact before you get pregnant. Okay? That's not other people's fault. You know? Like, people that aren't involved, you know? People in other countries, for example.
people want, and that is comprehensive immigration reform, path towards citizenship for the 11 million undocumented.
Senator Sanders, critics suggest positions like this send a message that when a Democrat is in the White House, the border is open. Do they?
No, that's what Trump says, and that is a total lie. What we're talking about is a humane, sensible policy supported by the American people. Nobody is talking about open borders, and of course, Trump lies about that. But the bottom line is, right now, we have in this country people who have been here for decades. They're working hard. They're raising their kids. They're an important part of our agricultural economy, our
like
construction
this,
economy.
Message that
These
when
are
the Democrat
people,
is in the White
and yet
House,
they're living
the
in
border
terror.
is
And
open.
we've got to end that terror and end the ICE raids and move towards a path. What we're talking about is a humane, sensible policy supported by the American people. Nobody is talking about open borders, and of course, Trump lies about that.
Teddy
But the
Kennedy
bottom line is
supported
right now,
that.
we have in this country.
I support it. I doubt whether those people think it's slavery. Well, and by the way, right after his vote against that, he went on the Lou Dobbs show and continued to canard that they're taking jobs. These immigrants are taking jobs from America, which is one of the Republican canards. Right after that vote, that no vote. And so, come on, this is, you think Ted Kennedy is for slavery? You think I was for slavery? You think when you voted for it for slavery? And with regard to your issue, your question relative to whether or not I would deal with supporting the border. Look, we can deal with securing the border by national technical means. All the bad things are coming through ports of entry right now. We don't need a wall. And by the way, I would immediately, as president, surge to the border. I would end this notion for the first time in history that people seeking asylum have to be in squalor on the other side of the river and in a desperate situation. They should be able to come to the United States and have a judgment made as whether or not they qualify. I would also surge to the border immigration judges to make decisions immediately, and no one would be put in jail while waiting for their hearing.
Senator Sanders?
That's kind of what I've been saying throughout the entire campaign. So what we need is, at the border, hundreds of administrative judges. We need to deal with people who are seeking asylum based on international law. We need not to be dividing children from their parents and dividing families up. We need a humane border policy. And I'll tell you what else we need. I speak as the son of an immigrant. My father came to this country from Poland at the age of 17. Had a nickel in his pocket, couldn't speak English, didn't have much of an education. I will end on day one the demonization, the ugly demonization from the White House of the immigrant community in this country. We've got a president who is trying to divide us up. My administration brings our people together, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Vice President Biden, you opposed sanctuary cities as a presidential candidate in 2007. Where do you stand now? Should undocumented immigrants arrested by local police be turned over to immigration officials?
No.
Senator Sanders?
Of course not. Look,
Joe is raping Sanders. Joe is raping Sanders. And I'm loving it. Fuck socialism. Hashtag fuck socialism.
And one of the things that goes on when you have that process is that not only the psychological terror, and I've talked to these kids. Kids are scared to death in America when they come home from school that their mom and dad may not be there, may be deported. What we need to do is to end, and I will end this on day one, the ICE raids that have been so harmful to so many people. We need to do, again, what the American people want us to do. I'm the son of an immigrant. This is a country significantly built by immigrant labor, built by slave labor. What we have got to do is appreciate each other and end this demonization and divisiveness coming from the Trump administration.
Senator Sanders, go ahead.
Look, we are a nation of immigrants. Our future rests upon the Latino community being fully integrated. 24 out of every 100 children in school today, from kindergarten through high school, is a Latino. Right now, today, the idea that any American thinks it doesn't pay for us to significantly invest in their future is absolutely a bizarre notion. Because if we do not invest, everything that the very wealthy are concerned about and the xenophobes are concerned about will in fact get worse, not better. We should be embracing, bringing them in, just like what happened with the Irish immigrants after the famine, just what happened to the Italians, etc. We've been through this before. Xenophobia is a disease.
Thank you, Vice President Biden. Let's move now to the climate crisis. I'm coming right to you, Senator Sanders. The World Health Organization calls the climate crisis a, quote, health crisis, and warns that climate change could fuel the spread of infectious diseases. Can you point to specific measures in your climate plan that address that threat?
Well, of course we do. I mean, we look, this is what the scientists are telling us, the same scientists who make your point there, Jake. What they're telling us is if we don't get our act together in the next 7 or 8 years, there will be irreversible damage done to this planet. We're talking about cities in America, from Miami to New Orleans to Charleston, South Carolina, being underwater. We are talking about severe droughts, which will prevent farmers in the Midwest from growing the food that we need. We're talking about extreme weather disturbances, which hit Houston, Texas, Venice, Italy, just a few months ago. We are talking about the absolute need, and I want to hear Joe's position on this. This is not a middle-of-the-ground thing. This is not building a few more solar panels or a few more wind turbines. What this is about is transforming our energy system as quickly as we humanly can away from fossil fuel. It is insane that we continue to have fracking in America. It is absurd that we give tens of billions of dollars a year in tax breaks and subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. This has got to end, and end now if we love our kids and future generations.
Vice President Biden?
First thing that President Obama and I were summoned to the Defense Department for was to meet with all the chiefs. The single greatest threat to our national security, they said, is climate change. The single greatest threat to our national security. Because as populations have to move, because they can no longer live where they are, because their islands are sinking, because you saw what happened in Darfur with the change in weather patterns in the desert there, it causes war. It causes great migration. Great migration. They said that's the single biggest problem. Number two, there's an awful lot of people today who are in fact getting ill because of the changes in the environment, particularly up where Bernie lives. It has nothing to do with him, but up in the Northeast, because you have everything from beetle infestation and a whole range of things that are causing diseases as well, in addition to eliminating foliage.
So, Vice President Biden, let me ask you then. You talk about this being the number one crisis.
Yes.
They told you at the Pentagon. The price tag for your climate plan is about $1.7 trillion. That's about $14 trillion less than Senator Sanders wants to spend on this. Is your plan ambitious enough to tackle this crisis?
Yes, it is ambitious enough to tackle the crisis, because what you go to JoeBiden.com, I lay out the first 13 things I would do immediately upon being elected. Number one, we're going to once again reinstate all the cuts the president made and everything from the CAFE standards, how far automobiles can go, investing in light rail so that we take cars off the road, making sure we're in a position where we are now in a position that we put 500,000 charging stations in areas that, in fact, all new highways that we build, making sure that we spend $500 billion a year in the federal government paying for transportation, the vehicles we run. all of those being converted to be able to run on low carbon fuel and or be able to run on no carbon fuel at all by having them move into a direction that is all carbon free. We can do these things. We can lay down the tracks where nothing can be changed by the next president or following president, the one beyond that. In addition to that, we also have to, I would immediately rejoin the Paris Climate Accord, which I helped put together. I would call the 100 nations, over 100 nations, but the 100 major polluters to the United States in the first 100 days to up the ante and make it clear that, in fact, if they didn't, there'd be a price to pay. And lastly, I would be right now organizing the hemisphere and the world to provide $20 billion for the Amazon, for Brazil, no longer to burn the Amazon so they could have forest, no longer forest, but they could have farming, and say, this is what we're going to do. They absorb more carbon in the Amazon and the region that's burning out than we emit in one entire year per year.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Senator Sanders.
All well and good, but nowhere near enough. I mean, you mentioned we started this debate talking about a warlike situation in terms of the coronavirus. And we said we have to act accordingly. You said it. I think you're right. I said it. We have to act dramatically, boldly, if we're going to save lives in this country and around the world. I look at climate change in exactly the same way. It's not a question of re-entering the Paris Accord. That's fine. Who cares? Not a big deal. The deal right now is, do we have the courage? And this gets back to the point I'm trying to make all night long. Do we take on the healthcare industry and tell them their profits are not more important than healthcare for all? Do we take on the fossil fuel industry? Look, in terms of the fossil fuel industry, these guys have been lying. They've been lying for years, like the tobacco industry lied 50 years ago. Oh, we don't know if fossil fuels, if oil and carbon emissions are causing climate change. They knew. ExxonMobil knew. They lied. In fact, I think they should be held criminally accountable. But this, Jake, is an issue of enormous consequence. What Joe was saying goes nowhere near enough. It's not a question of money. Give me a minute here. We have time to talk about this. This is a world-shaking event.
I understand. I just want to give him a chance to respond, and then we can come back.
Let's stay on.
We're staying on this issue.
Number one, no more subsidies for fossil fuel industry. No more drilling on federal lands. No more drilling, including offshore. No ability for the oil industry to continue to drill, period. Ends. Number one. Number two, we're in a situation as well where we are able to move rapidly to change the dynamic in terms of what we can do to set in motion. In fact, that he says climate change, Paris Accord doesn't mean much. We can get everything exactly right. We're 15% of the problem. 85% of the problem is over there. We need someone who can deal internationally. We need someone who can bring the world together again. We need someone who can move in a direction that, in fact, if you violate the commitment you make, you will pay an economic price for it, like what's happening in China. They're exporting coal, significant coal.
Thank you. Look, obviously, the Paris Accord is useful, but it doesn't go anywhere. If you laugh at Joe, then you're missing the point. This is an existential crisis.
Bingo.
You talk about, I'm talking about stopping fracking as soon as we possibly can.
Bingo. God damn. Joe Biden's body language is infinitely better than Bernie Sanders' body language. Like textbook examples of what to do and what not to do with body language in a debate like this, one-on-one. Like, god damn.
Talking about telling the fossil fuel industry that they are going to stop destroying this planet. No ifs, buts, and maybes about it. I'm talking about speaking to China. Well, I'm not sure your proposal does that. I'm talking about speaking to China, to Russia, the countries all over the world.
I'm not sure you're right about that, Joe. I think you might not
be that instead of spending $1.8 trillion on weapons of destruction designed to kill each other, maybe we should pool our resources and fight our common enemy, which is climate change. I know your heart is in the right place, but this requires dramatic, bold action. We've got to take on the fossil fuel industry.
Bernie Sanders, you don't stand a chance against Joe Biden, and he doesn't stand a chance against Donald Trump. God bless America.
Plan does not do that.
My plan takes on the fossil fuel industry and it unites the world. You just got finished saying. What's he going to do? He's going to bring these countries together, make it clear to them. I'm saying we bring them together, make them live up to the commitments. If they don't live up to the commitments, they pay a financial price for it. They pay an economic price for it because we can do everything. My state is 3 feet above sea level. I don't need a lecture on what's going to happen about rising seas. I know what happens. I watched the whole Delmarva Peninsula, just like it is in South Carolina and the rest. Something I know a little bit about. I wrote the first climate change bill that was in the Congress, which PolitiFact said was a game changer. I'm the guy who came along and said with Dick Lugar that we're going to trade. We'll forgive your debt if you don't cut down your forests. I've been way ahead of this curve. This idea that all of a sudden Bernie found this out is amazing to me.
Senator Sanders. Now, Bernie didn't find it out. Bernie is listening to the scientists. And what, you're talking about making countries around the world fulfill their commitments. Those commitments are not enough. But what this moment is about, Joe, is that the scientists are telling us they underestimated the severity of the crisis. They were wrong. The problem is more severe. So all that I'm saying right here is that we are fighting for the future of this planet, for the well-being of our kids and future generations. You cannot continue, as I understand Joe believes, to continue fracking. Correct me if I'm wrong. What we need to do right now is bring the world together, tell the fossil fuel industry that we are going to move aggressively to wind, solar, sustainable energies, and energy efficiency.
Thank you, Senator. No new fracking. And by the way, on the Recovery Act, I was able to make sure we invested $90 billion in making sure we brought down the price of solar and wind that is lower than the price of coal. That's why not another new coal plant will be built. I did that while you were watching. Number one. Number two, we're in a situation where we, in fact, have the ability to lay down the tracks where no one can change the dynamic. And that's why we should be talking about things like I've been talking about for years. High-speed rail, taking millions of automobiles off the road, making sure that we move in a direction where no more drilling on federal lands, making sure that we invest in changing the entire fleet of the United States military to...
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Senator, I want to talk to you about fracking because you want to ban fracking,
yes,
which is a method of extracting natural gas. The shift towards natural gas and away from coal has resulted in reduced U.S. carbon emissions. So how can the U.S. transition to your targeted goal of zero emissions with fracking completely out of the picture?
Because we have to invest in an unprecedented way. In an unprecedented way. You started off by saying that we're talking about a $13-14 trillion investment. That is a lot of money. And I've been criticized for that. But I don't know what the alternative is if we are playing for the future of this planet. So we got to be dramatic. And what being dramatic is massive investments in wind, in solar, in sustainable energies in general, and research and development, in making our buildings all over this country, my state of Vermont, and around this country, got a lot of old buildings. We can put millions and millions of people to work, making our buildings energy efficient, moving our transportation system to electricity. So what we're talking about is a massive, unprecedented investment. That is what the Green New Deal is about. I supported it, and I will fight to implement it.
Thank you so much, Senator Sanders. We're going to be back with more from the CNN Univision Democratic presidential debate. Stay with us.
We can't calculate our total taxes?
Sales tax, real estate credits, solar incentives.
And we have no way to integrate all that.
No, but BDO does.
People who know BDO.
The finish line is only the beginning. Others talk about the road to success. We make cars for it. During the Move Up sales event, current eligible non-GM lessees get this low mileage lease on this 2020 Cadillac CT5 for around $389 per month. Having dry skin is a struggle. Turns out, my body wash was the problem. But with Olay Ultra Moisture Body Wash, my skin went from dry and dull to visibly healthy in just 14 days. Better skin from a body wash? You better believe it. With Olay Body. At CVS Health, we're working across our company to bring innovative solutions to high drug prices, showing your doctor lower cost options for your medicines, digital tools that help us help you look for savings at the counter, helping you on your path to better health.
These days, we're all stressed. I hear you, sister. That's why I'm partnering with Cigna to remind you to go in for your annual checkup and be open with your doctor about anything you feel, physically and emotionally. But now Cigna has a plan that can help everyone see stress differently. Just find a period of time to unwind, a location to de-stress, an activity to enjoy. Or the name of someone to talk to. To create a plan that works for you, visit Cigna.com/mystressplan. Cigna, together, all the way.
At CNN, we see the devastation caused by natural disasters, famine, and war. We also see how the generosity of others can change lives. You and CNN's Impact Your World can help. Reputable charities that are checked out by CNN. See the difference it makes when you give time, share stories, or donate by just clicking the button. Be a part of the solution. Impact Your World.
The best primetime lineup is only on CNN. We need to know who's telling us the truth in power. Weeknights starting at 7.
So many questions about what is the federal government doing. Do you get the anger that is out here? They closed off this entire street. Do you really think you're a champion of the gay community? Sir, with all due respect, that's the argument of a 5-year-old.
I didn't start it. All the places I've been and all the things I've seen, all the people I've talked to, I carry with me. They're a part of what I do every night right here, holding the powerful accountable, keeping them honest.
AC 360, weeknights at 8, only on CNN. CNN International is open to the world.
I'm Christiana Manpour in Helsinki, Finland. I'm Becky Emerson in Abu Dhabi.
I'm here in a remote part of southern India.
From the New York Stock Exchange, Port Elizabeth,
Birmingham,
Puerto Rico, Hong Kong, London,
Damascus, Jerusalem,
Moscow,
Rome,
Nairobi.
Go international, anytime, anywhere, from selected devices. Stream it live now.
Source it before we've even started.
CNN Go International.
Commercial break in progress. CNN will resume momentarily. LOL. Oh, they make sure their commercials don't get cut off. LOL. The fuck?
Welcome back to the CNN Univision Democratic presidential debate on Tuesday. Voters in Arizona, Ohio, Illinois, and Florida will cast their votes in the Democratic primary. Here's Univision's Ilia Calderon.
Thank you, Jake. Let's move now to foreign policy. Senator Sanders, there are about 1.5 million Cuban Americans living in Florida right now. Why would they vote for you when they hear you praise a program of Fidel Castro, a dictator who jailed, tortured, and killed thousands of Cubans?
I have opposed authoritarianism, whether it's in Cuba, whether it's in Saudi Arabia, whether it's in China, or whether it is in Russia. That is my life record. I believe, unlike the President of the United States, in democracy, not authoritarianism in Cuba or any place else. What I believe right now in this world is that we are faced with a global crisis and a movement toward authoritarianism. That's what Putin in Russia is leading. That's what MBS in Saudi Arabia is leading. And as President of the United States, unlike Donald Trump, I will put the flag down and say that in this country and in this world, we have got to move toward democracy and human rights. That is my view and has always been my view.
To be clear, Senator Sanders, Cuba has been a dictatorship for decades. Shouldn't we judge dictators by the violation of human rights and not by any of their alleged achievements?
Well, I think you can make the same point about China. China is undoubtedly an authoritarian society. Okay? But would anybody deny, any economist deny, that extreme poverty in China today is much less than what it was 40 or 50 years ago? That's a fact. So I think we condemn authoritarianism, whether it's in China, Russia, Cuba, any place else. But to simply say that nothing ever done by any of those administrations had a positive impact on their people would, I think, be incorrect.
Vice President Biden, you have criticized Senator Sanders for praising Castro's education system. But in 2016, President Obama said Cuba made, quote, a great progress in educating young people, and that its healthcare system is a huge achievement that they should be congratulated for. How is that different from what Senator Sanders has said?
He was trying to change Cuban policy so the Cuban people would get out from under the thumb of the Castro and his brother. That is to change the policy so that we could impact on Cuba's policy by getting them opened up. That was about. But the praising of the Sandinistas, the praising of Cuba, the praising just now of China. China is an authoritarian dictatorship. That's what it is. We have to deal with them because they're there. But the idea that they, in fact, have increased the wealth of people in that country, it's been marginal, the change that's taken place. It is still, they have 1 million Uyghurs, 1 million Muslims in prison camps in the West. You see what's happening in Hong Kong today. And by the way, the idea that he praised the Soviet Union when it was the Soviet Union about the things that they had done well. They're an awful dictatorship killing millions and millions of people. And in addition to that, we have a circumstance where after the election was all over and we knew what was done by the Russians now in interfering with our elections, this man voted against sanctioning Russia for interference in our elections. I don't get it.
Well, what you don't get, and this is exactly what the problem with politics is about. All right, question. Did China make progress in ending extreme poverty over the last 50 years? Yes or no?
That's like saying Jack the Ripper.
No, it's not.
Yes,
you see,
it
Joe,
is.
This is the problem.
Yes, it is.
This is the problem. We can't talk. I know there's a political line. I understand. China's terrible, awful, nothing ever good. Blah, 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 blah. But the fact of the matter is, China, of course, is an authoritarian society. That's what I just said.
It's a dictatorship.
That's what I just said 5 minutes ago, you know. And by the way, you know, the question that was asked quoted Barack Obama. President Obama was more generous in his praise of what Cuba.
Joe Biden is bodying Bernie Sanders left and fucking right. I swear. It's glorious. It's glorious to watch.
Did in healthcare and education than I was talking about a program 60 years ago in the first year of the Castro revolution. So the bottom line is that I think it's a little bit absurd if we're going to look at the world the way it is. Of course we are opposed to authoritarian. And by the way, you know, before it was considered good policy, good idea. I was condemning the dictatorship in Saudi Arabia when a lot of other people in Washington with me. I was condemning the dictatorship in the UAE. You were not.
Thank you, Senator
Yes, I
Sanders.
was.
Vice President Biden.
Look, the idea of occasionally saying something nice about a country is one thing. The idea of praising a country that is violating human rights around the world is, in fact, makes our allies wonder what's going on. What do you think the South Koreans think when he praises China like that? What do you think the Australians believe in the shadow of China? What do you think is happening in Indonesia in the shadow of China? What do you think is happening in terms of Japan in the shadow of China? Words matter. These are flat-out dictators, period. And they should be called for it, straight up. We may have to work out, for example, I was able to help negotiate a new START agreement with Russia. Not because I like Putin. The guy's a thug.
Mr. Vice President, sticking with foreign policy, you acknowledge that your support and vote for the Iraq War was a mistake. What lessons did you learn from that mistake, and how might those lessons influence your foreign policy decision-making as president?
I learned I can't take the word of a president when, in fact, they assured me that they would not use force. Remember the context. The context was the United Nations Security Council was going to vote to insist that we allow inspectors in to determine whether or not they were, in fact, producing nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction. They were not. And what's the first thing that happened when we got elected? President Obama turned to me and said, get those troops out of there. I was responsible for getting 150,000 combat troops out of Iraq. I admitted 14 years ago was a mistake to have trusted him. And I'm prepared to...
Joe Biden is way better at stream of consciousness than Bernie Sanders is, and it's fucking hilarious.
Compare my foreign policy credentials up against my friend here on any day of the week and every day.
Well, let's start off with the war in Iraq, Joe. I was there too. I was in the House. I understood. And by the way, let's be clear about what that vote was. And you were there at the signing ceremony with Bush. Everybody in the world knew that when you voted for that resolution, you were giving Bush the authority to go to war. And everybody knew that's exactly what he and Cheney wanted to do. Most people who followed that issue closely understood that the Bush administration was lying through its teeth with regard to Saddam having weapons of mass destruction. I understood that. I was on the floor of the House time and time again. But the issue is not just the war in Iraq. That was a long time ago. The issue is the trade agreement. It wasn't so easy for me to lead the effort against disastrous trade agreements. The issue was the bankruptcy bill that you supported. The issue was the Hyde Amendment. The issue is the Defense of Marriage Act. The issue is whether or not in difficult times, and God knows these are difficult times, we're going to have the courage to take on powerful special interests and do what's right for the working families of this country.
Why did you vote not to sanction
the
Russians?
You know why? Because that had everything. You keep talking about Iran. That was tied to Iran. Russia was in Iran. I think John Kerry indicated his support for what I did. That was undermining the Iranian agreement. That's why.
Not true.
That's why. And that's the only reason why. I have condemned Russia time and time again.
Vice President Biden.
The fact is that the idea that I, in fact, supported the things that he's suggesting is not accurate. Look, I'm the guy that helped put together the Iran deal and got the inspectors in there. That was my chief of staff was the guy, my foreign policy guy, doing that negotiation. I was the guy that helped put together a 60-nation organization to take on the ISIS in Iraq and in Syria. I've dealt with these folks. I know them, and I know what they're like, and I know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. The fact is, this Bernie's notion about how he embraces folks like the Sandinistas and Cuba and the former Soviet Union and talks about the good things they did in China is absolutely contrary to every message we want to send the rest of
Senator Sanders.
I have led the effort against all forms of authoritarianism, including America's so-called allies in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia. And in fact, as you...
Hey, Joe Biden is right, Bernie. Words matter. When you say all forms of authoritarianism, hello, somebody. Look in the mirror, bro.
Worked with conservative Republicans to utilize for the very first time the War Powers Act to get the United States out of the horrific war in Yemen led by Saudi Arabia. That's what I did. So my view is that in a world moving toward authoritarianism, the United States has got to be the leader where people all over the world look to us.
Thank you, Senator.
For guidance.
Thank you, gentlemen. I want to change topics and ask each of you about some of your vulnerabilities in this election, starting with you, Vice President Biden. Senator Sanders has won more of the Hispanic vote than you in several key states so far. In fact, he doubled your support in California among Hispanics. He almost tripled it in Nevada. So why is your message not resonating with Hispanic voters?
Well, look, my message is resonating across the board. Every single state we've been in, there's been a significant turnout. In Virginia, turnout was up 70%. They voted for me. He didn't bring them out. I brought them out. And number two, look what's happened in Mississippi. Look what's happened in North Carolina. Look what's happened in Washington State. Look what's happened across the board. Why is it that I'm winning all those places? What's the reason? What's the reason? The reason is because they know I am a Democrat with a capital D who in fact believes that our base is the base of the Democratic Party, which are hardworking men and women who in fact are high school educated, African Americans and minorities, including Hispanics, but all minorities, suburban women, people who in fact have a sense of our place in the world. That's why I am winning, not just winning, but overwhelmingly winning. Not even close in these places.
Senator Sanders, let me just follow up with you about an issue that you're having. For the second consecutive presidential election, you're struggling to gain wide support from African Americans. Why is your message not resonating with African American voters?
Here is what I believe is happening, and this is an important point, and why I decided to run for president. I think it's imperative that we defeat Trump. I think our campaign of a biracial, bigenerational, multi-generational grassroots movement is the way to do it. Now, we have won some states. Joe has won more states than I have. But here's what we are winning. We are winning the ideological struggle, even in states like Mississippi, where Joe won a major victory. Turns out that a pretty good majority of the folks there believe in Medicare for all. And that's true in almost every state in this country. And the other issue that we don't talk enough about is we are winning the generational struggle. Depending on the state, we're winning people 50 years of age or younger. Big time, people 30 years of age and younger. I frankly have my doubts. Look, if I lose this thing, Joe wins, Joe, I will be there for you. But I have my doubts about how you win a general election against Trump. Will be a very, very tough opponent unless you have energy, excitement, the largest voter turnout in history. And to do that, you are going to have to bring young people who are not great voters, they don't vote in the kinds of numbers they should, into the political process. You're going to have to bring Latinos, who are great people, who have the agenda that we need, but also don't vote in the numbers that we need. I have my doubts that Vice President Biden's campaign can generate that energy and excitement and that voter turnout.
I will do that. And by the way, let's get this straight. The energy and excitement that's taken place so far has been for me. 70% turnout increase in Virginia. I can go down the list. They're coming out for me, and I didn't even have the money to compete with this man in those states. I virtually had no money. The press kept saying Biden has no money, and they were right. Biden had no money. And the idea, why are they doing that? The reason they're doing that is because they understand I know what has to happen, that I know what needs to be done. And by the way, the idea that everybody supports Medicare for all, he still hasn't indicated how much it's going to cost people. He's yet to know exactly what's going to. So here's my point. People don't know the detail at all. And the fact is, I am winning overwhelmingly among Democratic constituencies across the board.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We're going to be right back with more from the CNN Univision Democratic presidential debate. Stay right there.
People ask me what sort of a person should become
Thank
a celebrity
fucking
accountant,
God
and I tell them
that Tulsi Gabbard is not in this debate. Oh my God, it would suck so bad. Oh my God.
But I want it.
Hey, buddy, what's the damage?
I bought it.
The waterfall.
Nope, a new Volkswagen.
A Volkswagen? I think we're having a breakthrough here.
Welcome to Caesar's Palace. Thank you.
All month long on the TBS app. Stop and watch a movie.
Like a pit bull with no leash.
All month long on the TBS app.
Little Theo's nose had cause for alarm. His ordinary tissues were causing it harm. They left his nose raw with each wiping motion, so Dad extinguished the problem with Puffs plus lotion. Puffs have more lotion to soothe through the blows. and more pillowy softness to cushion your nose. Don't get burned by ordinary tissues. A nose in need deserves Puffs Indeed.
At CVS Health, we're working across our company to bring innovative solutions to high drug prices, showing your doctor lower cost options for your medicines, digital tools that help us help you look for savings at the counter, helping you on your path to better health.
I'm Bill Weir from CNN.
How many people are in these kind of conditions? Climate change is here.
Imagine that wall of flame. This just happened. I've never seen anything like this.
It's a full-blown disaster. To adapt is to survive.
My heart breaks for you.
We must get it right. It's life.
Most people don't know that pharmacy prices vary wildly and that insurance isn't always your best bet. GoodRx is an easy way for Americans to save up to 80% on their prescriptions. You type in the name of your prescription, you find a coupon, and save. GoodRx works at virtually every pharmacy in America. This year, we'll save Americans over $1 billion on their prescriptions. There's no membership required with GoodRx. It's totally free, and we don't need any personal information. Go to GoodRx.com to see if you can save on your prescriptions.
At CNN, we see the devastation caused by natural disasters, famine, and war. We also see how the generosity of others can change lives. You and CNN's Impact Your World can help. Reputable charities that are checked out by CNN. See the difference it makes when you give time, share stories, or donate by just clicking the button. Be a part of the solution.
Oh boy.
Impact Your World.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
So many questions about what is the
So
federal
many
government
questions,
doing.
Anderson.
Do you get the anger
There's so
that is
many
out
questions.
here? They
Do
close
you
off this
get
entire
the
street.
anger?
Do you really think you're a champion of the gay community? Sir, with all due respect, that's the argument of a
Sir, with
5-year-old.
all due respect.
All the places I've been and all the things I've seen, all the people I've talked to, I carry with me. They're part of what I do every night right here, holding the powerful
Keeping
accountable.
them honest.
Keeping them honest.
AC 360, weeknights at 8 only on CNN. CNN International is open to the world.
I'm Christiana Manpour in Helsinki, Finland. I'm Becky Emerson in Abu Dhabi.
I'm here in a remote part of southern India.
From the New York Stock Exchange, Port Elizabeth,
Birmingham.
Puerto Rico, Hong Kong, London,
Damascus. Jerusalem.
Moscow, Nairobi.
Go international, anytime, anywhere, from selected devices. Stream it live now.
Exhausted before we've even started.
CNN Go International.
Sis Boomba. Sis Boomba. Describe the sound made when a sheep explodes.
The legends of late night TV are coming to CNN. The story of late night.
Welcome back to the CNN Univision Democratic presidential debate. Finally, gentlemen, thanks so much for everything as we end here tonight. Let's return to where we began, the coronavirus, which does not discriminate based on ideology. It does not care if one is a Democrat or a Republican, a conservative, a moderate, or a progressive. Senator Sanders, let me start with you. What's your closing message tonight for those who are concerned about, affected by, or dealing with the coronavirus?
Well, our hearts go out to everyone. We need to move aggressively to make sure that every person in this country who has the virus, who thinks they have the virus, understands they get all the health care that they need because they are Americans. That we move aggressively to make sure that the test kits are out there, that the ventilators are out there, that the ICU units are out there, that the medical personnel are out there. But Jake, if I might also say that in this moment of economic uncertainty, in addition to the coronavirus, it is time to ask how we get where we are. Not only our lack of preparation for the virus, but how we end up with an economy where so many of our people are hurting at a time of massive income and wealth inequality. It is time to ask the question of where the power is in America. Who owns the media? Who owns the economy? Who owns the legislative process? Why do we give tax breaks to billionaires and not raise the minimum wage? Why do we pump up the oil industry while 500,000 people are homeless in America? This is a time to move aggressively, dealing with the coronavirus crisis, to deal with the economic fallout, but it is also a time to rethink America and create a country where we care about each other rather than a nation of greed and corruption, which is what is taking place among the corporate elite.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Vice President Biden, what's your closing message tonight for those concerned about, affected by, or dealing with this virus?
Number one, as I said at the outset, I just can't imagine what people are going through right now who have lost someone already. I can't imagine what people are going through when they have a mom. For example, a good friend of ours is sitting outside the window of a nursing home where her mom is because she can't go in, trying to do sign language to her mom and through the window to be able to talk to her. I can't imagine the fear and I can't imagine the fear and concern people have. Number one of the things that I think we have to understand is that this is an all hands on deck. This is, as someone said, maybe it was you, Jake, at the outset, this is bigger than any individual. This is bigger than yourself. This is about America. This is about the world. This is about how we bring people together and make the kind of sacrifices we need to make to get this done. And so first and foremost, what we have to do is start to listen to the science again. As I said, what we did, we met what I'd be doing today, I'd be sitting down in the Situation Room literally every day like we did at the outset of other crises we had when we were in the White House, and pulling together the best people in not just the United States, the world, and say, what are the prescriptive moves we have to take now to lessen this virus, to beat it, to go to the point where we can save more lives, get more people tested, get more people the kind of care they need. And then what do we do beyond that to make sure that the economic impact on them is in fact rendered harmless, that we in fact make sure every paycheck is met, every paycheck that's out there that people are going to miss, that we keep people in their homes, they don't miss their mortgage payments, they don't miss their rent payments, making sure that they're going to be able to take care of education, and by the way, the education institutions are closing down right now. And so there's so many things we have to do. And in addition to that, what we have to do is we have to have the best science in the world to telling us what can stay open and what need to be closed. Like I said earlier, the idea that we're closing schools, which I understand, but not being able to provide lunches for people who in fact need the school lunch program to get by. The idea that we would close any place that I can understand the decision made to close places where 100 or 50 people or more gather. But how do you keep open the drugstore to make sure you can get your prescription? How do you deal with the things that necessarily have to be kept going? And what's the way to do that? There should be a national standard for that. It should be coming out of the situation right now. And by the way, the single most significant thing we can do to deal with the larger problem down the road of income inequality is get rid of Donald Trump. Donald Trump. He's exacerbated every single one of these problems, both the immediate urgent need and how we're going to hold people harmless for the damage done as a consequence of this virus. It's important we do both.
Vice President Biden, Senator Sanders, we want to thank you both for being here tonight under these challenging and trying circumstances. We wish both of you the best. Our thanks as well to our partners at Univision, for Ilya Calderon and Dana Bash. I'm Jake Tapper. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay healthy, stay safe. Our coverage of both tonight's debate and the coronavirus pandemic continues now with Anderson Cooper.
Jake, thanks very much. There you have it, the CNN Univision Democratic debate. Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and a third unwelcome player, the coronavirus. The candidates acknowledged it at the close of the debate in their final remarks. Also in the very beginning, greeting each other with an elbow bump, not the usual handshake or hug, then stepped up to podiums that were a few extra steps apart, 6 feet apart to be exact. Chris?
Right, and then we saw some moments where these two gentlemen seemed to be a world apart about the pandemic and how to address it. Obviously, that was heavy in the air, and they both said that Listen, we got to think about the coronavirus right now. We got the breaking news from the CDC limiting the size of gatherings to 50 or under. How does that square with having primaries going forward? But as the debate began, we also got word from the Pentagon that the first American sailor has tested positive. So we're seeing what should be expected, Anderson. It's going to grow and grow and move through every aspect of society.
Yeah, it's been an extraordinary day, a momentous night, a debate unlike any we have seen. Vice President Biden committing to naming a woman as his running mate, Vice President. Senator Sanders saying he is leaning in that direction. There's certainly a lot to talk about over the next several hours, but we're putting into perspective, and let's start with that right now. Back with us is David Axelrod, Gloria Borger, David Chalian, Laura Barone Lopez. David Axelrod, you've seen a lot of debates. You haven't seen one quite like this, though.
No, I don't think we've had one quite like this under these circumstances. And, I thought that the opening of the debate, which obviously focused on the crisis, was the strongest segment that we've seen from Joe Biden in 11 races. He looked like a guy who was in command, who knew what needed to be done, who spoke to the problem with clarity and self-assurance. And it was a very, very strong hour, really, for him. I think it was sort of a tale of two debates in the sense that Bernie Sanders clearly came understanding the numbers in this race. This really wasn't about the primary race in many ways. It was about Bernie Sanders saying, these are the issues my people care about. How are you going to address them and bring them into the fold? And I think that Biden was still fighting the last war in the second hour and didn't pick up on those cues on climate change and a few other issues. And so in that sense, it was a missed opportunity because he could have paved the way for unifying the party moving forward after Tuesday, when presumably he will amass delegates enough to persuade Sanders, but he may not, to leave. And it'll be harder to do because he didn't take advantage of those moments.
Yeah, Gloria, Biden did seem to get off track when Senator Sanders began more aggressively going after his record.
Sure, he took the bait, and honestly, I don't see why he should have. He had a very strong debate. It was a substantive debate. Bernie Sanders was clearly trying to use this crisis to expose the healthcare system in this country and to talk about his Medicare for all and the unjustness of the society in terms of the economy. So Sanders had a plan, and he was attacking Biden, and Biden should have just said, go away, but he did take that bait. However, I will say that I thought Biden was really strong. If people were watching for somebody they could trust in a time of crisis, somebody who understands their families, Biden is Mr. Empathy. At the end, when he tells a story about a good friend of ours sitting outside a nursing home window trying to make signs to her parent so she could communicate even though she is not allowed in, people understand that is going on all over the country. And Biden over and over again said, this is bigger than us. This is bigger than America. This is about the world and how we interact with each other. And I think that's a point that, according to polling, people trust Biden on. So while I don't think this changed the race in a very dramatic way, I think he managed to reinforce a lot of what people like about him.
Yeah, David Chalian, I mean, it's rare to see more of a conversation debate. There were debate moments, time being cut off and the like, but it was much more of a conversation, and it definitely helps Biden in terms of not stumbling over some facts or figures or trying to get a point in when all other people are yelling. It's a format that seemed to suit him.
Yeah, when you get down to two people, especially two people who have a fundamental different vision, you do get a real robust conversation, and having the time to be able to do that so that you're not trying to, of course, make sure that 11 or 10 people on the stage have a fair time, it makes a big difference. I will say, in addition to the empathy piece that Gloria is talking about, the other thing I think Biden displayed in that first hour is a command of government and what it can do and how it can be deployed here. Everything from not just what the president could do in a given moment, but the use of the military that Biden fully committed to using in a way that Sanders seemed less certain to use. So that notion of a commander-in-chief, somebody who's been in government and knows how to deploy it, I think was really on display. I will note, though, what is so fascinating to me politically about this debate, the delegate math in this race has made clear that this race for the Democratic nomination has ended to some degree. I mean, has come to a close just by pure numbers of the delegate map. What this debate proved to me, what I think it sort of showed to Democratic voters there, is that what is entirely unclear is how this Democratic nomination race actually does come to a close, despite the delegate math. To what David was saying about the piece of bringing the party together when this nomination race gets down to one, when Bernie Sanders presumably is the one that departs at some point, I think that remained a mystery tonight because despite in advance of the debate, here's an olive branch from Joe Biden. I'm going to join Elizabeth Warren on bankruptcy. I'm going to join Bernie Sanders on free college. That wasn't the tone of tonight. No. Bernie Sanders was still unloading on Joe Biden's record in a way that surprised me, and Joe Biden was still engaging with Bernie Sanders. And so while the delegate math may be clear, I think actually how this race comes to an end is somewhat unclear.
Sanders was more aggressive than you thought he was going to be.
I did. I thought the whole debate was a bit hotter than I thought it was going to be.
He was aggressive. I mean, he did push Biden on, to me, the biggest issues was the 2005 bankruptcy bill, as well as on Social Security and health care. But what I found interesting was phrases that Bernie used when he said, I know your heart is in the right place, Biden. Yeah. And so he was clearly, I think, trying to push him policy-wise more towards where he sees his supporters line up, but wasn't going in for the kill with Biden, which is something that you may have assumed considering that he is so far down in the delegates. And I think it's because Sanders has repeatedly said over and over again that he is going to ultimately support the nominee. And there's a different tone from Sanders versus 2016. Yes. It's very clear that Sanders views Biden in a way that he didn't view Hillary Clinton. It's been widely reported that he considers Biden or did more of a friend when they worked in the Senate together, and he felt as though Biden has constantly been kind to him. Biden. So it's a different dynamic that he has with
everyone's so the night really has a dual context. I want to just shift focus right now to the coronavirus, and we have breaking news on that, as well as the plans that each candidate laid out tonight for addressing the pandemic. Moments before the debate, the CDC published new guidelines on limiting certain events, and I'm quoting now. CDC, in accordance with its guidance for large events and mass gatherings, recommends that for the next 8 weeks, organizers, whether groups or individuals, cancel or postpone in-person events that consist of 50 people or more throughout the United States, throughout the whole country, they're saying. We should note the guidelines do not apply to day-to-day operations of schools, institutes of higher learning, or businesses. Still, it is a big change, and if in fact executed by people around the country, would be a major shift for a lot of people in their lives. The backdrop to all of this, nearly 3,500 cases now in this country, 65 people have died so far. With that, I want to bring in our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. The CDC issued these new guidelines saying cancel or postpone in-person events that consist of 50 people or more throughout the United States. Is that enough? How much could that actually help contain the spread?
Well, I think it can go a fair distance towards containing the spread. I think that the bigger thing here, Anderson, is that we're finally getting some specifics around some of this. People have been told that social distancing is important. I think so far it's been sort of ad hoc, big organizations, communities, even states, sort of trying to figure out what that means, how to handle that.
God damn, coronavirus is boring. Well, that's enough of that.